Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Total Podcast with me, your host, Phil Scott. On this episode of the Total Podcast, I have a very special guest. She's gone through something very interesting, and I think it's a lesson that most listeners will find fascinating and interesting, and I'll let Giselle tell her story. So let's take it from there. So, my guest is Giselle Cortes. So, Giselle, thank you very much for coming on the show today. I truly appreciate it.
Hi, good morning, Phil. Thank you so much for inviting me on your show.
You're welcome. So, first of all, Giselle, before we get into why you're here, tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, where you went to school, that kind of thing.
Sure. So I grew up in San Diego, California. I currently still live here. I have two sisters. I went to college here. I went to San Diego State, where I received my bachelor's degree, and then I went on to pursue a master's in public health.
And what did you receive your bachelor's degree in?
I received my bachelor's in urban studies, and while it's not immediately correlated with public health, I worked for city government for a few years after I graduated, and I began to become involved in a series of health promotion programs for the city, and I realized that that's where my true passion rested, so I went on to continue with school.
Well, we are fellow SDSU alums, so congratulations for that.
Awesome.
And so now, Giselle, if you would, tell me about Cushing syndrome, and how you found out. So just tell us your background in terms of what you were going through physically and the symptoms and your journey throughout the whole process of figuring out how to change your symptoms and to get to where you are now.
Okay. So Cushing syndrome is actually also can be a disease, but I had the syndrome, which Cushing's is a condition of the adrenal glands, the endocrine system. And so we each have two adrenal glands. They are above our kidneys. And Cushing syndrome is the overproduction of the hormone cortisol. And so when your body produces an excess amount, several things start going wrong. Particularly, what I experienced, one of my first symptoms was elevated blood pressure. So I had extremely high blood pressure at the age of 31.
Wow.
I was always thin, active, played soccer, racquetball, basketball, ran half marathons, you name it, I did it. And it just didn't really make sense to me because there is also no family history of hypertension.
Hmm.
And so that was my first symptom. I was pregnant when I was 30, had a baby at 31, and after that was when the hypertension began. I was initially told that it was due to preeclampsia, which is high blood pressure in pregnancy. But when the hypertension persisted for years and years, up until last year, as a matter of fact, um, I knew that it was no longer, it wasn't related to pregnancy. In the following years, I experienced other symptoms such as um, a lot of weight gain, but not in the traditional places. I had a very round face. It was in my shoulders and my stomach area. And a traditional sign and symptom of Cushing's is what they call a moon face. Your face becomes so round, it's compared to a moon.
Wow.
Um, the shoulders they refer to as the buffalo hump because it's so much weight here in your shoulders and your neck. And like I said, a lot of roundness in the stomach area. I also experienced another symptom, which is menstrual irregularities. I had a miscarriage. I have two daughters, but I had a miscarriage in between them, and I could not become pregnant for the longest time. I also, in pregnancy, my third pregnancy, experienced another symptom is um, elevated sugar levels, diabetes, diabetic. I was gestationally diabetic. I also, in my third pregnancy, experienced other symptoms such as anxiety, and throughout this whole 7 year process, experienced a lot of depression. I didn't want to admit it to myself, to other people, but it was real. I was depressed, and I sought the help that I needed at the time because I was experiencing all these symptoms. The illness was progressing one by one, but all these things just, didn't really ever seem right to me because of, like I mentioned, my healthy background. I ate at home. My mom cooked for us. My dad, he was the soccer coach, so we were taught health to be a priority.
You had everything, including the kitchen sink, thrown at you in
Oh,
terms of
yes.
symptoms. My goodness. So, what process did you go through to figure out that you had Cushing syndrome? Because it had to take a lot of research for you to get to that point, I would think.
So initially, as I mentioned, I have a degree in public health, and I was doing research on my own, trying to figure out, is this hypertension medication that I'm on, is it healthy to be on the rest of my life? Is it okay to be on? That was where my research first began because that was my first symptom. And at the time, I brought it up with my doctors that I had, and they said, no, it's okay. You should be all right. Even though what I had read, I was on nifedipine at the time. I read that it was hard on your kidneys and that it really isn't something you want to be on for a long term. But I was young, as I mentioned, I was 31. I think I was trusting. I thought that the doctors knew better than me. I'm not a doctor, but I trusted them for, I believe, far too long. Ultimately, what helped me arrive at my diagnosis was 7 years later, going to a new doctor and a new healthcare system, fresh eyes, a fresh perspective. And when I went to this new doctor, I was explaining to him, I don't eat this, I exercise every day, I'm gaining incredible amounts of weight. I don't understand if I need a nutritionist or if I'm doing something wrong. And he stopped me in my tracks and said, I believe you. This doesn't seem right. You're young. Where the weight in your body, the proportions they're not right. They're in your face, as I mentioned, in your shoulders and your stomach. Women your age, they gain weight in their breasts, in their thighs, in their hips, not in their face, not in their stomach. And so this is all due to Cushing syndrome. And I said, wow, he found an answer. He's going to help me. And I didn't know what it was myself. I didn't know. I asked him, well, that's great. Is there a medication you can give me? And he said, no, not through medication. You will most likely require surgery. At
Oh,
that point, I froze. I was very nervous. I was very scared. I mentioned I have two young daughters, and it was not what I was expecting.
on today's episode of the Total Podcast, I have a very special guest. I've watched her on television for many years, and now I finally get to interview her. Her name is Elsa Sevilla. She is the host of Historic Places with Elsa Sevilla on KPBS here in San Diego. And without further delay, here's Elsa. So, hello, Elsa. Thank you for coming on the podcast today. It is an honor, and I truly appreciate you coming on.
Hi, Phil. Thanks for having me and for asking me to be on the podcast. This is awesome.
Well, you're very welcome. Like I said, it's an absolute honor to have you on. So, Elsa, if you would, I know you've recently written a book, so we'll get into that later on. So, if you would, tell the listeners about your background, where you were born, where you went to school, because it's a fascinating story. So, tell us about your background and then tell us how you got started into television, how you started your own production company, which is huge, and we'll just build from there. So,
Yeah.
I'll just let you have at it.
All right. That sounds great. That's a loaded question in a way, right? There's so much to talk about, but I was born in Tijuana, Mexico, across the border. And when we were 5 years old, my father had a severe accident in San Diego where he nearly died. And
Mm.
so we were uprooted from Mexico to come to San Diego so that we could be with him and care for him. He was in intensive care for several months because he, in the accident, had a fractured skull. And the doctors told my mom that if he wasn't going to survive, but if he did, that he would probably be in a vegetative state. And so I was 5 years old when that happened. And so we were uprooted from Mexico and we had to come to San Diego. And then we moved to Orange County so that my dad was transported to Orange County where my grandparents and my uncles lived, and they were also able to care for him. We stayed up there for several months. I think it was about a year. Then we came back to San Diego. And my parents were able to buy a house in Southeast San Diego, and that's where we grew up. And I remember in first grade, I had a moment where I was learning how to speak English, and I felt very isolated, very out of place in San Diego as a young child. But in first grade, when our first grade teacher was reading, would do circle time and hold up the book and turn the pages and point to the photos and the images on the book, I fell in love with storytelling. And years later, I think it was fifth or sixth grade, I had my first epiphany that one day, this voice in my head said, "In one day, you will become a writer." And I thought to myself, like, oh, okay. Writing sounds interesting. I'm interested in writing, but like what kind of writer would I be? An author? That'd be so complicated. And that was that. And then a year or two later in seventh grade, my mom and I were just chatting, probably in the kitchen table, and she mentioned to me, I'm wondering if you should go into be a radio announcer. Your teachers say that you're very social in class and that, you enjoy talking to people and stuff like that. And this light bulb went on, and I'm like, that sounds really interesting. I really would like to do that. And then in a split second, I said to her, I'd love to do that. That sounds great, but I want to be on TV. I want people to see me and know who I am. I don't know where that came from, but it just came. And so from that moment on, I started to think about like, what can I do to start planning to be a journalist? I want to be a journalist on TV. And little by little in high school, I was on the high school newspaper writing articles. And then in college, I was the photo editor for the newspaper. And we also did some communications and some, news segments. And little by little, I started to work on, how to get to my career. I did two internships, one at NBC San Diego, and then a few years later, one at C-SPAN. And so from a very young age, I fell in love with storytelling. And in my teens, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. And here I am 35 years later, producing documentaries, created our Sevilla Productions company that produces the documentaries for PBS. And so, in a nutshell, that's how I got into TV.
Now, one thing that just I love it when questions just kind of pop in my head as we go along. So, in those early years, and even in the later years, you were a mom and you juggled your work. So, how was that process like for you, and how did you balance the two?
Being a mom was like a wonderful experience, but I remember people telling me like, being a mom, that's going to turn your life upside down. And I thought, no, I've taken care of my nephews. I can handle it. But yeah, they were right. It turns your life upside down in the best way possible. And juggling, children, going to school, doctor appointments, homework, and all sorts of stuff, and trying to work, and not only just trying to work, but creating a business production company was extremely challenging. What was really great is I was doing what I loved, which was storytelling and picking these amazing stories that I was just curious about. And the other thing that was really great was the flexibility. I think as a parent, one or the other has to have some flexibility to be able to run the kids to school, pick them up, and in between work, and then do dinner, and then, oh, let me finish up some stuff before we go to sleep and that kind of stuff. So it was great, but it was hard. I think nothing great Anything great in life is a lot of hard work, and you
Right.
also never do it alone, right? If it's great work and that you've been able to do something fantastic, there's always a team, there's always a group of people that are helping, supporting you. And so I've been able to work with my partner, Guillermo Sevilla. We met at Channel 10 in 1990 and we became best friends. And then a little bit more than that. And then we got married and had kids, but we've always worked together. He's a videographer, director of photography, and we've been able to really work well together. I think we complement each other super well because he loves storytelling through video and sound and images, and I love telling stories through facts, information, unique stories, and obviously historic photos, which is one of the things that I really, really love about history, but also the impact that history has on us. And a lot of people don't realize that history gives us confidence, it gives us identity. And for me, moving from Mexico to San Diego at such a young age, I lost my identity. And it took me years to find it again. I was able to find it through my partner, Guillermo, who has a lot of, he grew up in a very tight-knit family with a lot of traditions. And then I also was able to find that identity through a volunteer group, Mana de San Diego, who have been the women in Mana have been like my sisters. They uplifted me. They showed me how to be proud of my heritage and not be embarrassed of it. Because when we moved to San Diego in the 70s, there were rough times and we weren't welcome in the neighborhood. I remember our teenage neighbor asking me just a few months after we moved in, like, when are you moving out? When are you and your family moving out?
Mm,
And so when you're young, you feel isolated and unwelcome. So having to lose your identity, knowing that you're not welcomed, it's hard to climb out of that. And it took a lot of years and a lot of hard work. But I do credit that having a community of people who support you, who want to see you succeed, following your passion, and just finding the answers to all of this and finding yourself again, your identity, loving yourself, allows you to bring it all together and live a good life, because I think that's what we all want to do.
absolutely. And if you would walk me through a little bit of your time at Channel 10 and then the transition to KPBS and then doing the show.
Yeah, that's a great question. So Channel 10 was a dream job. It was my first job out of college from San Diego State. It was the third job that I applied. I applied to two radio stations. I didn't get an interview. And then I applied to Channel 10 and I got an interview. And I'm like, okay, great. And I didn't get a call back. I didn't get a call back, waiting. Finally, they called me back. And my first job was the assistant to the assignment editor. And that meant taking phone calls from the public and listening to the police scanners for stories and just looking through the papers and everything else, looking for stories so that the reporters can do the story for the evening newscast. And my job was also to research the story, find people that would be experts, that would be the best person to tell the story. And so that's how I started. And it wasn't easy. It was hard work, but it was the best school that I ever had. They gave me the foundation to become a journalist and to follow my passion of storytelling.
So, on this episode of the Total Podcast, I have a very, very special guest. Her name is Lydia Kennedy, and her kids have written an amazing book. So, I'm just excited to have my listeners hear about how everything evolved and took place and how it was written. So, without further ado, here we go. So, Lydia, thank you so very much for doing the show today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Phil.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Well, you're
Thank you.
very welcome. I'm glad you could do it. And we have like a big, huge 3 hour time difference too. So thank you for doing it this late for your time zone.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm actually a night bird, so this is fine. Or night owl, I should
Oh,
say.
that's terrific. All right. So Lydia, first
Yeah.
off, tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, and a little bit about your kids, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, my background actually started a very long time ago. I've been in the performing arts all my life. I was a professional ballet dancer, and then from there, I had a knee injury, so I changed my career around and went into television and radio broadcasting.
Hmm.
And with that, my journey has kind of evolved. And then I took a break when I had my family. And being a mom was my number one thing, and the hours and everything in that industry is very different. So I wanted to have a little bit of a different schedule. So as my life as a mom evolved, I had started all these great adventures with my children. And as every parent, we always have these situations that arise or different things that we encounter with our children. And as my children have grown, they've kind of taken after me in our storytelling. And in the storytelling journey, it started off with my two girls, and it was two Georgia peaches when we moved to Georgia. And we started off with these books that we were starting to write, adventures we were starting to do, and videos we were starting to do.
Hmm.
And I started homeschooling them. And then from homeschooling, they went back into, a normal school. And then I started homeschooling them again. And when we started homeschooling them, we had even more adventures to add on from our school journey. So I used to take about 6 hours in the car to go back and forth to different activities in schools. And in our adventures, which is what led to our first book, we took our real life adventures, like this messy car ride that we have here in the back, and our food getting lost in the car, our toys getting lost in the car, and all of those things that happen in your life as a mother and as a child. And we created these stories. My oldest one loves to storytell, and she loves to rhyme. So with that, she started to come up with, well, Mom, we get everything lost. And then my husband started to chime in, and everyone. So it was a very big family adventure in these car rides that we would come up with all these different scenarios and adventures that we would go on. And from there, we decided that we wanted to make this something that we could bring everyone into. And I come from a human interest story background. So I used to do human interest stories, and I used to get into sports reporting a long time ago. And I would focus on telling the stories of student athletes and their lives behind the scenes. And with their life behind the scenes, a lot of these children, they came from hard lives or hard situations, and they really worked hard to get to where they ended up in life. Some of them became professional athletes, some of them became sports reporters. A lot of these children have these histories and these stories that needed to be told. So with that, we kind of brought it all into one. So the kids and I decided that we were going to make a book series based on real life adventures, but not just real life adventures. We wanted it to be something that we could make a positive impact with. So with that, we came up with a motto and a mission, which is for any negative action, plant a positive reaction. Because life throws curveballs at you, especially now more than ever. Life is very challenging for the generation that is growing up in the world that we have right now. Life isn't what it used to be like. And sometimes there's situations that come to us that we can't control. Sometimes they may be mistakes that we've made that we want to correct. Sometimes it might be something that we find ourselves in that we don't even understand how it happened. Or it could be something just happening in the world or the country you live in, or maybe your home environment, or maybe just anything happening in life. We all have different challenges and we all have different situations. So with that, the kids and I wanted to do something that we could bring people along with the journey, but also teach them that they can turn any mess, anything that's negative, and turn it around into something positive.
I am so honored to have a repeat guest. And she's not just any guest. She is the author of multiple books. Her name is Jannesy DeLeon. And Jannesy, thank you so very much for coming back on the podcast. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me again.
You're welcome. So, Jannesy, you've written a brand new book, and my listeners are just waiting to hear about it. So, without further delay, let's hear about it. So, let's tell us about your brand new book that's coming out, and it's coming out pretty soon too.
Yes, it's launching on Tuesday, this Tuesday, on December 2nd. and it's called Here Comes Sam.
All right.
A story of rescue puppy love with Gabby and Nikki. So it's the third book of the series. I can finally say it's a series. I've just been waiting. I knew with the second book it was the start, but now I feel like it's officially a series now. And the co-star of the book is introducing our pup Sam.
Now, if you would tell us or remind our listeners or introduce new listeners to the Gabby and Nikki series, how it started, what inspired you to write it, and how it goes into the new book, Here Comes Sam.
Yes, I was inspired by my own children. I have two children with severe complex uh, issues, and they have multiple disabilities. They're non-speaking, and growing up, they were kind of ignored when we would go to, let's say, events or a party, and uh, people tended to ignore them, like say hi to me and not hi to them, and that always kind of hurt me. And I always wondered how they felt inside. And so the idea of started growing in my mind about, I think we need to start teaching children at a young age to learn how to or feel confident in approaching someone with disabilities or different abilities, and just show empathy, show some kindness, don't leave anybody out. Um, And so after like 15 years of, in the grind, in the caregiving grind, I finally decided to go for it, write these books. And I kind of just wanted to start it with young children, so kind of expose them and normalize disabilities. And so the first book was called Tag You're It. You see it right there behind me. And it's about a little girl who has cerebral palsy and who's non-speaking and in a wheelchair. And she sees kids playing in a park, and she wants to play tag too. And of course, the kids are skeptical. And so the book is about, she shows them that, hey, I can play too. And in the end, I help kids learn how to modify games. And so that way everyone is included. And then the second one is called Not a Shot. And that is her brother, Nikki, is kind of the co-star, the co-star of that book, and he's scared of doctor visits and, of course, getting shots. And so Gabby has to find a way to help her younger brother overcome his fear, and she does. And then we have a Black Roddy, and she really is the star of the family. Her name is Samantha. We call her Sam, and all our family members and friends always kept asking me, when are you going to introduce Sam into the series? When are you going to introduce Sam into the series? And I'm like, I guess I'll do it with the third book. And so it's a story about a little rescue puppy that Gabby and Nikki adopt. And so in the book, they kind of got to figure out, Gabby is immediately bonded to this pup, and she wants her to sleep with her on her bed. She has to figure out how to get her on her bed. And so it's really a story about teamwork but that connection and that bond really that Gabby develops with the rescue pup. And although our pup technically didn't come from like a shelter or foster, uh, their father actually rescued her from like a neglected home. And so she is our rescue pup. And she's the center of the family. I mean, she just took to Gabby and Nikki right away. And she thinks it's Gabby and Nicholas as her own. So she's definitely, I mean, super excited. All my friends are excited. My family, anybody who knows my Sam is just thrilled that now she's the little star of the third book.
Well, that's a terrific premise for your book. Now, how long did it take you to write this one?
This one, I could say it's been over 2 years, I think, since I initially wrote the manuscript. And it kind of what I tend to do is I initially will write something and kind of just step away. And that normally my favorite time to write is during the winter after the holidays. Things kind of settle down. I love being in front of my window and seeing snow coming down. That's when I like to write. And then what happens is as the spring and summer comes along, guess what? Now I got to start doing things outside, and you know how it is, vacations, whatever, mowing the lawns or, pool, all that kind of things, all those kinds of things keep me busy and I don't get the chance. So I kind of step away from it, but it helps me because when I kind of return to it, when I have some time or I'm missing that, I'll go back to it and I'll go, oh, wow, well, this kind of sucks. And I'll kind of just re-edit it and work on it. So it takes some time. And you think when something You think something is done. You think that manuscript is like, you know what? This is it. This can't get any better. This is perfect. You either set it aside again, come to it again, and you realize, wow, okay, what was I thinking? And you re-edit it again. And then comes the part when you then either hire an editor or you start sending it out to your author friends to edit, and they come up with all sorts of things, and you're like, I had no idea about this. I can't, it's like starting all over again. And but in the end, after all those trials, all those tribulations, you get the final product and you realize, wow, it had to go through all that process. And you think because it's a children's book and it's only, depending, it's not a lot of words or between, you can edit and re-edit till the cows come home, like forever. And at some point you have to let it go. And the person who actually, and your friend of mine, who helped me a lot with the editing process, I did hire an editor, but my pal and yours, Erin Murphy,
Yes.
she really helped me shape this story, and I will forever, forever be grateful to her because she kind of had to, because I had a hybrid publishing house helping me with the books. Um, it's almost like she had to kind of take me back to the beginning, the roots of everything that we learned, because we both went through that whole journey, the Kitlit, I think, writing school, and kind of remind me, start with the storyboard, you know, do stick figures and figure out how do you, and it just changed the story. It literally, I said, you know what? I don't like the feel of this story just by drawing my little stick figures in the storyboard and all my text. It was just perfect. And I didn't know how to thank her because I felt that the story was so much better because of her suggestions. And I just thanked her by kind of like incorporating her in the book.
Oh, that's
She became a
awesome.
character in the book. So I was
Wow.
so excited to 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 surprise her with that because she was obviously the first person to see the final book, the final text.
Well, Erin
And
is
so
awesome. She's awesome.
yes. Oh, she's just a, that, you know, an extraordinary person who she just supports the authors like there's no one else.
And
And so,
I wonder how she finds time to do everything she does too, being a pilot and doing everything else. It's like, oh
yeah,
my
she
gosh.
volunteers
Hmm.
and and she's just always advocating for others. I mean, I think she's just, she has her two books of, her aviation animal rescue. And now she's just kind of dedicated to helping and uplifting other authors while still selling her books. But she's out there hustling and just proud to know her. And we do a lot of collabs together. And so she's become a really good friend. And I'm just excited for us to do a lot of things in the future.
Well, you already answered my question about the most challenging part of writing the book. What was the most fun aspect of writing it?
The most fun, obviously the whole process, it's really like the illustration when you start seeing the book come to life. You can envision it in your head as you're reading the text, but once that illustrator starts putting, pen to paper and starts uh putting to life your words, that's when you kind of get that, ooh, this feels good, that kind of that that excitement, that feeling in your stomach, like this is really happening. um And that's my favorite part. So as I would get the sketches, I would start then create it almost like a storyboard. I would make it into a book. And again, you can see what works and what doesn't work. You're still editing even to the end when you think you finalize your text. When let's say you get your final print, um, you still fixing and editing things, but it's those illustrations. They are the most fun, and because now you're seeing your words come to life.
I have a very special guest. She's written her first children's book, and I think you'll be quite impressed by it. Her name is Katie Saucedo. And Katie, thank you so much for appearing on the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Of course, I'm happy to be here. I'm excited.
Thank you, Katie. Well, first of all, let's tell the listeners a little bit about your background, where you were born, where you went to school, that kind of thing.
Sure, I'm born and raised in Chicago, Illinois girl. I went to grammar school. Actually, it's right on the next block from my house. I still have still go to, the church services there and everything, and still part of my life. And for high school, I went to the same high school my parents went to where they met.
Wow.
So that's pretty cool. It's a long time ago already for me. And
Oh,
I just always loved writing. English and writing was always my thing. I kind of, wanted to go into journalism at the time when I went to college. I kind of went in a different direction, but now in the past few years, it's just been on my heart to, do this book, and finally did it.
and where did you go to college?
I went to college at Moraine Valley College. It's a community college. I got my associate's degree there. Always wanted to go further, but life kind of happened, and you just didn't end up going back, but I kind of wish I did. I enjoyed school. I especially loved college. I really loved college. I like being able to pick what classes you want to go to, and what interests you, and try to avoid the math at all costs. So
Hmm. Now, tell me also, when you were a child, were you an avid reader, and is that kind of what inspired you in your later years?
yes. Oh my gosh, my mom always bought me little golden books. Oh my goodness. The I had like a box full of books. I remember, for everything from the little golden books, Dr. Seuss, a lot of animal stuff, because I've always loved animals. I've always loved animals. So she always would read to me and encourage me to read. My dad always jokes around that he reads a book about every 10 years.
Oh.
But my mom was a big encouragement, reading to me when I was a child.
Now, also tell me, what do you think drove your passion for writing?
I think I just always enjoyed it. I always wanted to, I just felt like I wanted to get a story out there and show, especially this particular book that I wrote. I wanted to honor my pets. I'm a big animal lover, as I mentioned. Susie and Roxy, they're actually I don't know where the cat went, Roxy, but Susie's on the floor next to me, and I got the puppy next. We just recently got a puppy too. So they're being nice and quiet right now, thankfully. But I just always wanted to write. I loved writing. I always remember when I was, oh gosh, maybe first or second grade, I wrote a story, and I was just so excited that I wrote it. It was like for school, we had to write like a short story for class or something. I might have been fourth grade. I
Hmm.
can't remember. But I was like, just you felt it in you. You just feel it in you that you love writing. And I think for me it was always a love of writing and an avoidance of, like I said earlier, of math.
Now, tell us about Susie and Roxy Go Camping, and,
Yeah.
and what motivated the idea, what inspired the idea for you to write about Susie and Roxy going camping?
I I kind of wrestled with the idea of what I wanted my first book to be. I knew I wanted it to be about Susie and Roxy and adventure with them, but I didn't know like what direction to go down. But I decided to go with camping because we love camping in our family. When I was younger, my dad would take me camping all the time out west, like to Montana and Wyoming. Um, go with my husband too. Our family has my sister-in-law has a camper not maybe a couple hours away, and we like to go there. And I said, what about an adventure with them? Like, incorporate those elements of what I enjoy about camping and put it with Susie and Roxy.
Now, also, tell us about the illustrator of your book, too.
Oh my gosh, so awesome. I worked with Babuki Publishing, and they got me connected with her. Just awesome. Just everything I dreamt of as far as my vision for my book. I thought I could do drawings. I really did. I'm like, I'm going to do this. So I got an iPad. I downloaded Procreate. I'm like, I cannot draw for nothing. I'm like, I need an illustrator big time.
Aw.
So I got connected with Babuki through a friend recommended them, and she was just awesome to work with. I feel like every time they came back to me with like, this is how we drew this part of the book. What do you think of this? It was like exactly what I was envisioning, you know? So I
Mhm.
didn't feel like I had to be like, no, I want to change this, I want to change that. I feel like I hardly even did that. She was really awesome to work with.
She is a book author, but she is so much more, and I can't wait to get into all of this with her. So, without further delay, let's hook up with our guest. So, our guest today is Kathleen Kastner. So, Kathleen, thank you so very much for being on the podcast today. I truly appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Phil. It's an honor to be here with you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, first of all, let's start with your background. Where were you born? Where did you go to school? And then we'll talk about the book and how your series of Karma Cats books evolved, and we'll just go from there. So let's start from where you were born and where you went to school.
That sounds great. Well, I'm actually from Kansas. I was born and raised in a town called Salina, Kansas. And then I went to the University of Kansas, Jayhawks, if anybody's a college basketball fan.
Huh?
And I went there, I have an undergrad in journalism because I love to write. And I also have a master's degree in exercise physiology through the School of Education. So I was always into health and wellness, and I ended up going back to grad school for that. And that's what I ended up doing with my degree. I actually moved to San Diego right after college. I took a leap of faith with a friend. I worked for Sharps Hospital here in San Diego and doing exercise physiology. And then I got introduced to yoga at this age. So this is 30 years ago. I'll date myself. And all I knew was fitness because I'm from Kansas. No one's ever talked to me about yoga. And so anyways, I got introduced to yoga, and it literally like changed my whole life. It just transformed everything about my life for the better. It changed my health, it changed my diet, it changed my relationships, my relationship with God. It just really, and I was terrible at it, but I just felt so great when I left yoga class that I ended up, it's a very long story, I ended up going back to the Midwest to Kansas City, Missouri. I'm adopted, and I ended up meeting my biological mom who lived in Kansas City, and all my college friends were there because KU and Kansas City are very close. So I ended up moving back and opened one of Kansas City's first yoga studios in 1999
Wow.
with a partner. And so it was really fun because, you know, we got to work for ourselves, and it didn't happen overnight. I would do exercise phys by day, started teaching yoga at night, and then after a couple years, I did take a leap of faith and quit my day job and opened this studio. And it was really fun. People were very receptive for the Midwest, which you wouldn't think that would be the case. And 3 years into it, though, it burned. It didn't really even burn down. It burned up,
Oh,
which seems tragic at the time, but it actually set me out to go out on my own. I opened my own studio at that time, so I did that for 16 years in Kansas City, Missouri. I was a yoga studio owner, and then 11 years ago, I actually sold it to move out here with my husband, who was also a yoga teacher. So we've been living in Encinitas, California now, which is what I call my soul place, my soul city, for 11 years, and we're very happy here. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell. And then I started writing the books. I had written 2 nonfiction books for adults. One was on dating, because I didn't meet my husband until I was 39, so I wanted to help other people who were looking for their husband.
uh-huh.
It's called The Cheerleader Speaks. And then the second one I wrote on weight loss, because I actually witnessed more people lose weight from doing yoga than I ever did when I was in the fitness field. So I wrote a book called Yoga's Path to Weight Loss. That's kind of my own theories of why yoga works. It really helps people heal their relationship with their body, heal their relationship with food, which is very important, and it definitely cultivates a relationship with God, with the divine, whatever that means to people. So I had done those books, and I had these 2 wonderful soulmate cats throughout this whole journey, really, since 2001. I love to share their pictures because they sit on my desk. I don't know, hopefully people can see it. This is Julian and Oliver,
Yes.
and they are the Karma Cats. I got them when they were 5 weeks old in Kansas City, Missouri. Someone had found them, and their mother, thank goodness, and brought them to a vet office where I was going. And so that's how I got Julian and Oliver. So they were with me through all my transitions, the studio burning down, me moving to California, getting married, everything. So they passed. Julian lived to be 17 and Oliver lived to be 20, which is incredible. So I had them since they were 5 weeks to that. And it was just, I don't have my own children. So it was, for me, it was like the greatest blessing of my life was being their mom. So when they passed, I really took it hard. And like I said earlier, I just say it kind of quickly so I don't start crying, because they will always be the greatest loves of my life. They were my soulmate pets, my dearest and greatest friends, and I do feel them still with me. They actually I've had them come to me in dreams, so I have peace, finally, knowing that they are safe with God and that I will be with them for eternity. That's my belief system. So that gives me hope. And so when Oliver passed, that was the end of a huge era for me. And my boys have passed. I've sold my studio. Like, who am I? I'm in my early 50s. I'm like, who am I without yoga, without my boys? So I started writing the Karma Cats. My first one is called Karma Cats to the Rescue. This is Julian and Oliver. And when Julian passed, we actually got a new cat named Noah. And that helped Oliver, because Oliver was super sad without his best friend brother. So I like to share Noah because Noah was a street cat and we adopted him from our shelter. I've been a shelter volunteer for over 10 years in the cat room. And so I had adopted Noah from our shelter, and he was a bit of a wild man, which is what his story is based on. He tried to break out through a window, he escaped through doors. And so he was a street cat, and someone had picked him off and put him in the shelter for 5 weeks. So he was like ready to roam. So we started leash walking him. And I show this because the long story was 5 years after we got him, I entered him into Newsweek's Pet of the Year for his leash walking skills. And he miraculously won. So now Noah's been on the news. He's been in a couple newspapers here in San Diego. So my Noe, who I call him my Noe, is in Karma. This is him. He is in my first book, which is probably going to always be my favorite. Karma Cats to the Rescue is about Julian and Oliver helping Noah adjust to being into our family. So it's a really fun, adventure, sweet story, really based on a lot of true things. So that was great that Noah really helped Oliver, and it extended Oliver's life to be 20 almost. So we feel very blessed. And then now when Oliver passed, we have 2 white kittens that are actually, I'll just show you in another book.
Awesome.
I can talk to you guys all day. I hope somebody out there likes cats. So Karma Cats Kitten Adventure, we have 2 rescues from Tijuana. This is Elijah Blue and Olivia Sue, and she's very special. She has one eye, and I love showing them. That is them and their mom. And this story is about them being street kittens, and they have been separated from their mother, who's gone to help find them food. And so the Karma Cats, there they are, chime in and help Elijah and Olivia. So that is my long cat story. So now I have Noah and the twin, the white ones.
That's wonderful. Well, tell me, in terms of writing the books, in terms of how long it took you to write each book, how long does it take you from inception to publication? And you publish your own books, correct?
Yes, I am self-published, and I like to share that with people if anybody's interested. My hardbacks are actually with Ingram Spark, because Amazon self-publishing division, Kindle Direct Publishing, does not do hardbacks for children. They do paperback. So I do my paperback with Kindle Direct Publishing on Amazon, which I highly recommend. They're super easy to work with. They actually have true phone customer service 24 hours. So they're very easy to work with. And if anybody's interested, you can write me on my website, KathleenKastner.com. I'd be happy to help. And then Ingram Spark does the hardback. And you can do both with Ingram Spark. I just choose to do it. And then an ebook. The ebook I actually do with KDP also. But it takes me about a year from beginning to end with my illustrator, who I like to brag upon. Her name's Coraline Tran. She's in Vietnam, and we're on our 5th book right now. But she's just been a real godsend. She actually has 2 cats in Vietnam, so she can relate to kitty cat momhood. So I write it. I have to have it done by January. That part actually doesn't really take that long. I usually have an idea of a theme. Each book has a real life animal welfare theme.
Mm-hmm.
We have a farm one that deals with factory farming. We have Penny the pig who escapes life on a factory farm, everybody, and ends up in a sanctuary. So each theme is about something real and animal welfare, and that's why all the real animals are in the back of the book to help connect the children to the characters. So I'm at the same time trying to weave in a message of taking action for animals in need of help, because that's what the Karma Cats do, and being kind, obviously, and compassionate to animals.